This video for the Infrastructure Advisory Group covers the STREETS program and best practices approach and associated funding. The purpose of the Infrastructure Advisory Group is to assist public works staff with an assessment of streets, traffic, and stormwater maintenance program. This video discusses the STREETS program assessment. The assessment follows the American Public Works Association Roadway Maintenance Guide for Best Practices in Streets Maintenance. Overland Park follows the best practice philosophy of keeping the good streets good with the resources that are available to them. Keeping the good streets good is about staying ahead of the curve of deterioration, understanding when to preserve and when to rehabilitate to extend the life of the streets. The typical life of an untreated roadway is 20 years. Preservation can stretch it to 50 to 60 years. Over the first 75% of a road's life, it will drop 40% in quality. Investing in the right treatments at the right time can add life to the pavement. For every dollar to keep the good streets good, you save $6 to $14 later in the life of the street. Investing in the right treatment at the right time also reduces complaints and improves safety. 53% of Overland Park streets are in very good to excellent condition. 40% of the streets are in fair to good condition, with only 7% in failed to poor condition. Overland Park uses a Pavement Condition index and visual inspection to determine the condition of their streets. Aging infrastructure, increasing costs, and declining revenue has made this more challenging. Historically, Overland Park's pavement condition has been very good. Today, it is rated as good, and by 2040 at the current funding level, it will be fair. Without preventative maintenance or rehabilitation, our street network continues to age. A best practice is to add lane miles of life back to the system each year. It needs to be equivalent to the number of lane miles in the system. The average street life is 50 years with good preventative maintenance. Without increased resources at the best practice funding level, the system will continue to age. By 2060, the average age of non-thoroughfares will be 68 years old and thoroughfares 70. Currently, 25% of streets are over 50 years old, 13% of streets are beyond their useful life, and 26% are not built to city standard. Following the best practice of keeping the good streets good will result in the following outcomes. The pavement condition will remain at very good, will reduce the average age of the street network from 55 to 35 by 2040. The best practice philosophy is also designed to improve the life cycle cost per lane mile of street, as well as improve citizen satisfaction level with street maintenance. This graphic shows the current service level projected out as a future funding scenario versus the best practice. The best practice includes a slight increase in preservation lane miles, a significant increase in rehabilitation lane miles, and a significant increase in street reconstruction and increasing thoroughfare improvements. Non-thoroughfare streets include neighborhood residential streets and collector streets, which connect residential streets to thoroughfares. For non-thoroughfare streets, the best practice is to crack seal in year 3, chip seal every 7 years, mill and overlay in year 30, and reconstruct in year 50. In the future funding scenario with no change in current funding levels, the city would only be able to fund crack seal in year 36, chip seal every 9 years, and mill and overlay in year 68. Reconstruction couldn't happen on average until year 475, not year 50 as recommended by the American Public Works Association Street Roadway Maintenance Manual. Thoroughfare streets provide for the movement of traffic throughout the city. Examples are Metcalf Avenue and 119th Street. For thoroughfares, the best practice philosophy is to crack seal in years 3, 13, 23, 33, and 43. UBAS or mill and overlay rehabilitates the service in years 10, 20, 30, and 40, with a reconstruction in year 50. At the current funding levels, the thoroughfare street system could be crack sealed 3 years after construction and would need rehabilitation in year 16 because there were limited preservation efforts. Presently, there are thoroughfares in the northern part of the city that need to be reconstructed. It is projected that in the next 10 to 15 years, the city will have approximately 130 lane miles of thoroughfare that will need to be reconstructed.
If the neighborhood street reconstruction is cash funded and the rest of the best practices are put in place, the annual budget increase is substantial for the best practices approach. The annual budget would need to be increased from $37.1 million to $111 million. That's a $73.8 million annual increase of cash funded, or 18 mil increase in property taxes.
18 mills is more than the city's current property tax mill rate for all city services. The best practice funding scenario is not feasible. The purpose of the Infrastructure Advisory Group is to determine how close can we get to that ideal target and get the expected outcomes we want from our infrastructure. Evaluating what we can expect from our investment in the best practice funding level is a good start in our discussions. If the future scenario at the current funding level provides a future street condition of fair, and the best practice philosophy gets us a very good street network, what is the target for Overland Park? What can we afford to pay for? And what would we be satisfied with in terms of condition? Is there another approach besides the best practice we should consider for non-thoroughfare streets? Let's look at the approach of no preservation work and mill and overlay every 10 years. The third approach to evaluate is to crack seal every 3 years and overlay at 30 years with reconstruction at 50 years based upon condition. What can we expect for the increased investment in non-thoroughfare streets? While approach number 2 and 3 are very similar in cost to the best practice, the outcome in terms of future street conditions are not. Is there another approach also we should consider for thoroughfare streets? Approach number 2 is a reduced service level with crack sealing every 3 years and reconstructing at year 30 because it won't last 50 years without preservation. Approach 3 would be to crack seal every 3 years and overlay at year 30, reconstructing at 50 years based on condition. Again, these two approaches are very similar in cost to the best practice approach, but the expected outcome in terms of future street condition is not similar to the best practice, which is very good. What about chip seal? Are there other preservation methods or options to keep the good streets good? We looked at 3 options: microsurface, UBAS, mill and overlay. We compared alternative preservation techniques to chip seal, using the same lane miles of work, comparing different preservation methods. For example, microsurface instead of chip seal, UBAS instead of chip seal, and mill and overlay instead of chip seal. In terms of cost per lane mile, mill and overlay was the most expensive, with chip seal being the least. This graphic shows the additional revenue needed and the property tax increase required in mills to fund the alternative methods. While mill and overlay is expensive, it does show positive lane miles of life added and shows progress on backlog can be made with more mill and overlay over chip seal.
In 2021, Public Opinion Strategies completed a statistically valid survey on behalf of the Overland Park Chamber Foundation and the Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City. On the topic of repairing and resurfacing neighborhood streets, some people are against the resurfacing process known as chip seal because they say it is messy and can pose a safety hazard to kids and bike riders. Other people favor chip seal because they say it's the most cost-efficient maintenance process. It provides quick access for residents to use streets after application, and it lasts 7 to 9 years. When asked whether the city should use chip seal or not, 30% favored the use of chip seal, 36% opposed it, and 28% said this is an issue they don't care about. When asked whether they would pay more taxes to eliminate chip seal, 55% said they would not, and 39% said they would.
Overwhelming Infrastructure Advisory Group members in November strongly supported the following value statements.
Plan for and fund the replacement of infrastructure in the city's long-range financial plans. Invest in infrastructure in good condition to preserve it because it costs more in the long run to let it deteriorate before repairing it. And prioritize infrastructure investments. We look forward to the discussion about how best to balance the age of the system and pavement condition, the treatment methods and approach to improve citizen satisfaction and maintain a reasonable funding level.